Hey.
Hello.
You need your wine?
It's not about need, Mark. But yes, I believe my trusty business partner is in search of more red.
Gotcha.
The governor drank all of it at our table. It's gone. It's gone.
So I've got some formal questions that have been prepared, but let's start with just what's going on with you. Like you're in New York.
Let's just start with thank you. This it was the best unscripted, completely heartfelt introduction I've ever had. I appreciate it. Secondly, there's a difference between a set and a setting, and this is one of the greatest settings on planet Earth, and I'm thrilled to be here. And there's a difference between people and personnel. And you all are good people, especially you with the wine. Thank you very much. That's amazing. Thank you. So, yeah, thanks. What a treat to be here. You guys are doing great work.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is just beyond the icing on the cake for us to have a conversation with you and for me to be a small part of sharing you and what I know about you with this group of people that I have so much respect for. But yeah, bring us up to speed. Just like mom's on TV tonight. What you were in New York all week promoting. What else is going on with you before we get to the formal stuff?
So Dirty Jobs, and really watching that video is about the strangest thing you can do if you're me, because I don't remember most of that, and yet you can't deny it because it's you, and you're looking at it. And so that show's been on the air for 20 years now, and we just wrapped up the most recent season about a month ago. So new episodes of that hot mess sometime in December. Our little adventure, How America Works, has Forrest Gumped its way into season 3, and woohoo! Thank you. Thank him. I can't take any credit for this one. He did show up in the aforementioned bar in Santa Monica and took a seat on the aforementioned stool and talked to me about the way he felt about this country and the way he felt about work. And we quickly realized that the Venn diagrams were more or less superimposed and found ourselves in violent agreement on virtually every topic. So it was only a matter of time until we did a show together. But this show was his idea. He sold it, called me, said, "Would you like to narrate it?" I said, "Sure." And now I'm sort of hosting it, presenting it in a way.
Yeah, it's very cool.
How America Works is Dirty Jobs without a host, just an honest fly-on-the-wall look at the industries that make our country work. And you've done such a great job with it, and I'm thrilled to do that. But let's get back to me for a second, if we could. This podcast you mentioned turned into a thing. It's out of control. It's called The Way I Heard It. And then some guy over at TBN has turned that into a TV show called The Story Behind the Story. So if you can't get enough of me, you can watch TBN on a show with me talking about me regarding another podcast that I host. So that's awesome. And
I'd stick with How America
You know
Works.
what? Don't forget your mom. It's always your mom. Tell us about your mom. So my mother is Peggy Rowe. She's 84 years old. Her third book was published this week. It's called Vacuuming in the Nude and Other Ways to Get Attention. And God bless her. I just spent 3-4 days with her in New York, making the rounds. When you write a book, you flog the book. My mom's so funny. She's like, Michael, you spend a year, maybe 2 years writing this thing, and when you sit down with your idea, you love it, and then you see your idea come to fruition, and you love it even more, and with each passing chapter, oh, it's so exciting, and then you finally finish, and then you start talking to the publisher, and then you get the date, and then you have to wait, and then they tell you to do things like talk about your book. So you start talking about your book until you hate your book. So my mom is out there promoting her book, and it's so amazing to watch her do it. It's going to be a bestseller. It's the best thing she's ever written. She's heroic to me. Mom wrote every day for 60 years. Every single day, this woman would get up and walk out of the house. Wherever she was going, she always took her yellow legal pad and a couple of number 2 pencils. And she would interview anybody she ran into. It didn't matter. It could be you. It could be you. A cop riding a horse. You know, she grew up with horses. She's got questions. Suddenly the poor cop's like, I don't know what's happening, but I've been sitting here for 45 minutes talking to this woman. And then she writes a story and it winds up in the local paper, you know. But nobody would ever publish her books. And that went on for 60 years. She never quit. And then at 80, she got a book deal. And now she is out of control. At 10 o'clock tonight, there's a special on Fox News called America's Grandmother, starring my mother. And I don't know how much weirder it gets than that, but it's happening right now while I'm sitting here drinking your wine. It's awkward, but you know.
To roll with it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about students. So ACE, you know, the theme this year is saving the American student, and you know, we know through you largely and others in some other sources that the country, although the country was built on trades, trade school has been largely discounted in the last few generations. How does our country regain greatness through the trades? And you know, your vision, obviously you're very poured into this subject. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, the conversation typically gets stuck between employers who are trying to hire and people who lack the skills to fill the jobs. And so we have an employer and an employee conversation. But the real story, in my opinion anyway, and the reason I'm still doing dirty jobs and shows like How America Works, is because the answer to your question is to somehow engender an appreciation among the rest of the country for the work that we're talking about. The wonder that used to be self-evident when you flicked the switch and the lights came on. You know, the thrill of flushing the toilet and watching everything in it go away. I mean, these are modern miracles. And if we're not properly gobsmacked by the enormity of that miracle, then we're not going to really appreciate the people who are on the front lines of making that happen. And then we're going to stop being able to bring those people into our workforce. And if we don't have a balanced workforce, we don't have a balanced country. And right now, there are 7.5 million open positions. 7.5 million. Now, there are 5.8 million people who are supposedly out there looking for work, but the mismatch of skills is extraordinary. And so even if all those people somehow got hooked up with 5.8 million of those jobs, well, you know, we'd still have, 6 million open positions. So the skills gap is real, and it's a problem, and the vast majority of those open jobs don't require a 4-year degree. Now, there's certainly nothing wrong with a 4-year degree. I have one, liberal arts degree. It served me well, but the crisis, as I see it right now in the country, has to do with this undeniable, terrible arithmetic of 5 tradesmen retiring every year being replaced by 2. That's bad math, and it's not going to last. And so, to answer your question, we have to get people thinking about not how much money you can make as a plumber or a steam fitter or a pipe fitter or a welder. I talk about that all the time because debunking the stigmas and stereotypes and myths and misperceptions that keep people from pursuing a career in the trades, those things are real. But we also have to make a way more persuasive case for those jobs to the people who benefit from them. And that's really what my foundation is doing. We're simply trying to confront those stigmas and stereotypes and at the same time remind people that when this much opportunity exists in a country like this, it says something about us. And I'm not sure it's a flattering thing. Right. So we have to do something to celebrate the opportunities that exist, and we have to encourage kids to learn a skill that's in demand. We have to encourage the qualities we wish to reward: work ethic, delayed gratification, a decent attitude, personal responsibility, all that stuff. That's the stock and trade of my little foundation, and that's why I make the rounds, and that's why I tell the stories I tell. And I was on the radio, I think a week ago, maybe it was a month or a year, I don't know. I was talking to Jake, who was up here earlier. There you are. He was on the show, and we realized that, again, our foundations are really simpatico. You guys are focused on choice, and you're making an impact with families in a K-12 world. And man, that's such an important place to move the needle. I'm a little further downstream. I'm talking mostly to kids who are out of high school and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of their life and whether or not they should borrow money for a 4-year school or any school for that matter. And so my message on the foundation side, to answer your question, comes down to really this. We got $1.7 trillion, $1.7 trillion in outstanding student loans. We have 11.5 million open positions, most of which don't require a 4-year degree. And we took shop class out of high school. And we're lending money we don't have to kids who aren't going to be able to pay it back to train them for jobs that don't really exist anymore. So part of what I'm trying to do with your show and Dirty Jobs and even my mom, just telling my mom's story about work ethic, for crying out loud, right? It all lines up in my little world anyhow. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm telling stories, and I'm making videos and sharing them with the world of people who went through our program and have prospered as the result of learning a skill.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, it's huge. And that kind of goes to my question. Could you have just a personal question, could you ever have imagined some years ago that you would really be the biggest voice in the room as an advocate for training in the trades and trade schools and shining a light on this reality in America?
It's impossible. It's impossible that I'm sitting here, and yet here I am. It's just like watching that video. It's like, what in the world? How are you still doing that? It's surreal. Look, I grew up on a little farm, not really a farm, in a farmhouse on some land in Baltimore County. And I grew up with my 2 younger brothers and my mom and dad, and next to us was a superhero named Carl Noble, who happened to be my granddad. And the reason I'm sitting here is because Carl Noble and my mom were both heroic to me in very different ways. My pop built the house I was born in without a blueprint. He only went to the 7th grade. But you could take your watch apart, put it back together blindfolded. Same thing with your combine, same thing with, he had the chip. Same thing with your guns, right? My dad. Right. We all know my pop. I'm preaching to the choir. He was legendary in Baltimore, built the church I grew up in. He was that guy. And I was convinced, Mark. I was afflicted with the absolute certainty that you can only find in a 14-year-old, that I would follow in his footsteps. And so I worked as his apprentice for a couple of summers and eventually came to the undeniable conclusion that the handy gene is what you call recessive. And the thing that came so easily to him was quite mysterious to me, right?
I understand.
It was a mystery.
Yeah.
I wasn't a complete dilettante. I wasn't a total idiot, but it wasn't easy. And so after a couple of summers of not getting it plumb, right, and or screwing up the concrete pour, and finally he pulled me aside. He said, "Mike, you can be a tradesman if you want. A tradesman is just a state of mind. But do yourself a favor and get a different toolbox." Right? And it's a devastating lesson, right? To be 16 at this point and realize that just because you love something doesn't mean you can't suck at it, right? And conversely, just because you're not interested in a thing doesn't necessarily mean you might not be good at it. And so I went on an odyssey of sorts. I got out of high school. I had a stammer when I was a kid. I was weirdly kind of shy. I had a couple of teachers and a scoutmaster who literally grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and said, not this way, this, not that, right? I was very lucky to have that. And I went to a community college, and I started studying things I didn't really care about. Music, writing, English, philosophy, acting, my family, we didn't come from any of that. But I had a weird sort of facility for it. And so I got out of community college, I started freelancing. I started narrating shows for the National Geographic because once I got my stammer under control, my voice dropped when I was very young, so I sounded older than I was. And I could... Great voice. You're very kind. Sherry, if only I had something to say. No, I was like 21 years old and sitting in a recording booth, you know, for the National Geographic, saying things like, high above the vast reaches of the barren Serengeti, the lone wildebeest wanders away from the herd, and there at the watering hole meets his doom, you know. So these people are like, yeah, this guy sounds all right. We'll hire him again. Meanwhile, I got pimples and acne, and I'm like the kid. But I got a tool in my toolbox, right? And then I got some other tools, and then I started freelancing. I faked my way into the Baltimore Opera. I sang there for 8 years. I did community theater. I got in commercials. I went back to a university, wound up getting my BS degree, which totally lived up to its name. And way leads on to way, as the poet says. And then really, I promise I'm answering your question, but what ultimately happens is I freelance for 20 years in this crazy business, impersonating a host for anybody who would hire me, narrating whatever copy they put in front of me. I worked for 3 years at the QVC cable shopping channel, selling things in the middle of the night, things, ma'am, that you've never seen before, things you can't imagine, the Health Team infrared pain reliever, the Amcor negative ion generator, right? I'm just getting my toolbox together, doing my thing. The karaoke machine. I literally sang My Way at 3 o'clock in the morning. I may have had some wine. And so it was a crazy time, you know, and one day I found myself working for CBS in San Francisco, hosting a terrible little show that nobody watched called Evening Magazine. And I was sitting in my cubicle one day, and my mother called. My mother called. This is 20 years ago, and she says, Michael, your grandfather turned 90 years old today, and you know, I was thinking he's not going to be around forever. And wouldn't it be, her words, I swear to God, wouldn't it be terrific, Michael, if before he died, he turned on the television and saw you doing something that looked like work? Mothers, I mean, brutal.
All comes back to mom.
My God. So I took a cameraman that I worked with the next day. I went into the sewers of San Francisco, and I hosted an episode of Evening Magazine, and it did not go well. But when I was in the sewer, I met a sewer inspector, and my cameraman filmed me for a couple hours. After I failed to host the show properly, he filmed me working with him, alongside of him. And I put that footage on the air a couple nights later, and it looked like work. And my pop saw it, and that footage turned into a segment called Somebody's Gotta Do It. And that segment ultimately got me fired from CBS, but I negotiated the terms of my own dismissal, and in those terms, because really, Somebody's Gotta Do It was not a good segment for Evening Magazine, right? I mean, people are sitting down,
Eating their meal.
it's 7:15. You're having your meatloaf, and you tune into your favorite local news show to see a heartwarming story of a three-legged dog in Marin overcoming canine kidney failure or whatever the stupid stories we did. And there's me crawling through a river of crap, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. So anyway, they fired me and let me have the idea, and I sold it to the Discovery Channel eventually, and way leads on to way. And so to answer your question, no, it's impossible that I've been to Congress 3 times testifying on the changing face of the modern day proletariat. It's impossible that I've had a chance to narrate 19 seasons of Deadliest Catch, and the wildebeest on the Serengeti is now turned into the crab on the bottom of the Bering Sea. It's impossible that Dirty Jobs is still in production. It's impossible that my mother is still calling me saying things like, Michael, you know, I've got a 4th book in mind and I could sure use another forward. And I'm like, my God, it's all impossible, yet undeniable. It's impossible that those kids stood up here an hour ago, you know, who went from a place where there was quite literally no reason to feel hopeful to quite literally every reason to feel optimistic. It's impossible at a glance, but it's also inevitable when you put a tent up in your backyard and invite some nice people together to get behind a notion. And so, yeah, I didn't see any of it coming, but without my mom and without my grandpa and without a scoutmaster and a couple of mentors along the way, you know, it's all impossible till it isn't.
Till it isn't. Yeah. Gosh.
Did I answer that question, by the way? I may have.
No, I don't know.
I may have
was
wandered.
too lost in the story. I don't even remember the question. One more quick one on the kind of on the nose on the education stuff, and then I want to kind of open it up for any questions that you might have. Mike has graciously volunteered to spend a little extra time on any
I'm never
thoughts or
leaving.
questions you might. Yeah, let's keep the wine flowing. You mentioned, you know, we're at ACE, we're focused on K through 12. Mike Rowe works on 12 forward, and it was referenced tonight. You know, it's a indisputable fact about how we're lagging in math in America, 38th, or maybe we're up to 37th now. We decided, given the talent in this room. But are there other skills from K through 12 that you find are lacking when people get even to trade school? Are you seeing deficiencies in the work you do in that runway towards even, say, a trade education?
Not skills. Skills are easy. You can train anybody almost to do almost anything. It's qualities that I worry about. It's character. It's soft skills, right? Tuck your shirt in. Maybe don't answer your phone during the interview, right? You know, it's like there's a long list of stuff that we can't really teach in high school anymore because, well, somebody might be ashamed or embarrassed, or somebody might be offended, right? We award work ethic scholarships. Somebody said it earlier, and I couldn't agree more. We've got there's no such thing as a bad scholarship program, but you have to decide what it is you want to reward and encourage and when. So there are academic scholarships, and there's athletic scholarships, and there's artistic scholarships. Mike RoweWORKS started in 2008 on Labor Day at the height of the recession because I wanted to reward work ethic, and I wanted to do it because every morning when I was going out and shooting this crazy show I can barely remember, the headlines in 2009, 2010, you guys will remember, it was all the same thing. It was a constant tracking of unemployment numbers. 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 8%, 8.5, 9, right? And then at one point it was, okay, there are 12 million people out of work, and that's all anybody was talking about. But everywhere we went on Dirty Jobs, we saw the same thing, help wanted signs. They were everywhere. And, you know, I would always go out for a beer, usually with the guys who hosted us, and I would always ask them, most of them entrepreneurs and small business people, what is the great challenge? And even then, at the height of all that unemployment, the biggest challenge was finding people who were willing to show up early, stay late, learn a skill that's in demand. That I heard it everywhere. So work ethic became the thing, the hinge that I always wanted to come back to, because Dirty Jobs did such a great job of celebrating that without the lecture, without the sermon. Nobody wants those things, except maybe on a Sunday. But on TV, you want to be entertained, right? And so you have to get their attention. But the show did that. And so most of what I've done along the way is just try and make that case. And how do you reward work ethic? How do you quantify it? I can't look into your heart. I don't know. But we do try. We ask our applicants to make a case for themselves. We ask for an essay. We ask for video. We ask for references, like lots of references, just like happens in the real world. And it's amazing the pushback you'll get in this day and age. People, they're like, well, why? Why do I have to do this? Well, it finally got to the point where I wanted to do something that I could point to that was some sort of a manifesto, some statement of purpose. And I called it the Sweat Pledge.
I love this. That's where I was going to go next.
So, I'm a sucker for a good acronym, and SWEAT stands for skills and work ethic aren't taboo. And one evening, after some wine, I just sat down and I said, what do I believe? Like, looking back at the things that I think helped me, the things I learned from my mom and my pop, my dad, my mentors, and so forth. And I just wrote down 12 things. The first one was real simple. It said, I believe I've won the greatest lottery of all time. I'm alive. I walk the earth. Above all things, I'm grateful. And there were 11 others, and they get increasingly challenging, deliberately so, because I want to have a conversation about all of these things. And so the Sweat Pledge is this real simple thing that I insist everybody sign. And of course, every year, some parents will say, my son's not signing this, my daughter's not signing this. How can you say that my safety is my responsibility? Just because I'm in compliance doesn't mean I'm out of danger. What do you mean by that? I'm like, well, what do you mean, what do I mean? I mean, everybody's got skin in the game. Everybody has to be, vocational safety is an important thing. I want to have this conversation. Well, we're not signing that. And I say, fine. This particular pile of free money then is probably not for you. And there's a wailing and gnashing of teeth. And how can you do that? Well, so there are a lot of things I can't do in business that I'd like to do. But with a foundation, it's mine.
That's right.
I can have a Sweat Pledge. And I can say, this matters to me. And this is what I want. I'm stingy with my money. I know you guys are too. So we hand it out with great discretion. So we do a lot of things to try and have a conversation about work ethic. And I know you guys have seen it. It's in the headlines now every week. It's gratifying when the headlines catch up with either your TV show or your foundation. And when people start talking about the precipitous decline in work ethic, yeah, then they call me and they say, well, what do you think? And I tell them. But my point is, what began as a simple attempt to start a conversation about the importance of work ethic and skilled labor that I call the Sweat Pledge is now a curriculum 5 inches thick, made possible by the people who support my foundation and now in 20 schools. Now, I don't know what that will ultimately mean or lead to, but I do believe that a lot of parents today want this. They want to have this conversation. They can't necessarily wait to have it or to see it unfold in a public school. So we have a curriculum that allows people to have it at home, that maybe, if I can get it into the school, if I can get it past the PTA and so forth. So, again, I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't know, but to answer your question, it's not really about, oh no one has the skill. It's really not a skills gap. It's a will gap. And if we don't create in our kids who are getting out of high school, if we don't foster the curiosity and make a persuasive case for that part of our workforce, then those 5 retiring and 2 coming in are going to go to 6 retiring and 1 coming in. And then the question will become not whether or not you can make a good living as a plumber, but how long do you want to wait for one?
Yeah.
And that's when things go splat. And that's when the country goes, oh, wait.
Right.
That's when it gets
We missed
real.
something here. Yeah. Well, we'll run out of time. And again, I want to get to some of your questions. But if you get a chance, look at the Mike RoweWORKS website and look at the Sweat Pledge. Really, what it is, it's a character questionnaire. It's like what I don't know if we use that word, but it's ultimately a lot of what we're talking about is what's the character of this person and how are they going to perform? How's that character going to reflect in the next leg of their journey? So yeah, I'm sure a couple of you have questions for Mike or thoughts. Jake's got a mic back here.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm way in the back here. I actually have the first question is going to come from our buddy here who we all met, Logan. And Logan, he wanted me to ask this for him, but he said, Mr. Mike Rowe, have you ever been hurt while you're doing either Dirty Jobs, well, any of the TV shows that you might have been in?
Well, I was hurt during that introduction, actually. Not seriously, Logan, but a lot. 3 broken fingers, 2 broken toes, cracked rib, had my eyebrows and my eyelashes singed off by a blast furnace when I was working with a farrier. Got bit by a shark during Shark Week, very annoying. But I was wearing a stainless steel shark suit, which made it exciting. But still, anytime a shark grabs you and shakes you, it's a bad day, right? So that happened. Yeah. We all got knocked around a lot, but thankfully nothing really serious. But I will tell you that safety is a huge part of it. Well, it's a huge part of Dirty Jobs. It's a huge part of everybody's life, and we had this whole thing evolve out of Dirty Jobs called Safety Third, and Safety Third became kind of a rallying cry because, and this is like a 2-hour talk that I sometimes give, but the 2-minute version is this. The first season of Dirty Jobs was so dangerous, so hazardous, so ridiculously frightening that no one in my crew, including me, got hurt because we were all amazingly focused on the dangers around us. And everywhere we went, there was a mandatory safety briefing, and we paid attention. And everywhere we went, there were signs that said safety first, safety first. And everywhere we went, there were people who said, here at such and so-and-so facility, nothing is more important to us than your safety. And we would listen to all those things. And great. And nobody got hurt. And nobody really got hurt in season 2. But Logan, in season 3, the wheels came off the bus. And that's when, my cameraman, my audio guy, and me, every single week, somebody, a concussion, a contusion, stitches. It was amazing. And over time, I started to think, while that was happening, something else was happening during those safety briefings. Namely, we were falling asleep because all that talk started to sound not like talk, but like, remember Charlie Brown's teacher? Wah, 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 wah. It was just lock out, tag out, confined space, check the box, go through the motions. And that's when complacency sets in. And that's when a lot of bromides and platitudes wind up becoming dangerous. And that's how safety first can hurt you. It's funny, when you think about the most dangerous intersections in the world, they're not the intersections with no traffic lights. They're not the intersections with no signs. On those intersections, you have to look both ways. You got to wait, and then you got to run. Well, when the little guy tells you to stop and the light changes, well, you stop. And then when the light goes and the little guy starts walking, you just step out. And that's when the big blue bus hits you, right? So I was suddenly surrounded with all of these examples of what happens, what bad things happen when you start to believe that somebody else cares more about your health and safety than you do. That was one of the big lessons to come out of Dirty Jobs. And it happened because I singed my eyebrows off with a blacksmith. Good question, Logan. Thank you.
Maybe one more question, Jake.
I have one more over here, Dylan.
First of all, I have to say the stereotypical thing. I'm a huge fan.
You're
Been
not
a
that
fan
big.
for years and years and years, from you being extremely eloquent on Facebook, dismantling people's objections to your viewpoints. Awesome.
Thank you.
My question is throughout your years getting to where you're an American icon now, and I wholeheartedly agree with Mark Pierce on this. In that time frame, did you have short, medium, and long-term goals, or was it an aspect of luck in that work ethic of that? And if you believe in short, medium, and long-term goals, how do you project that on younger people to set goals, achieve goals, even if there is an aspect of luck in there?
Man, that's such a great and complicated question, but I think the beginning of the answer is what somebody said earlier tonight. Cookie cutter solutions do not work. Top-down solutions, Governor, do not work. Bottom-up solutions is why ACE is working. And modesty aside, why my own foundation works. And so what does that mean with regard to goals? Well, it's tricky because some people need short-term, long-term, and medium-term goals. But not everybody, and not everybody at the same time. So this is why advice is such a terribly tricky thing. You never know when somebody might take it. and you never know who's listening, right? I thought for 20 years that I wanted to have a hit TV show. And so for a while I worked really hard to get it. And then I realized that I never would. And so I focused on the work. And I freelanced for 10 years, and I really liked it. I wasn't looking for a hit with Dirty Jobs. I was just looking to do something that my grandfather would recognize as work, get my mother off my back, right? A long-term goal? Short-term? Medium? I don't know. I was kind of playing the cards I got. I was happy enough doing what I was doing. Same thing happened to my mom, right? Remember, she wrote 60 years. She gave up on the idea of being a best-selling author, but she never gave up on the work. She never stopped writing. So I don't know what to tell a woman like my mom with regard to goals and dreams. And I really don't even know what I would tell a younger version of myself if he were sitting here. But I might say something along the lines of, we have to really be careful. That whole safety first thing, that's really well-intended advice. And there's a lot of well-intended advice in the world that is really, really dangerous to certain people at certain times. And at the heart of your question is this idea of happiness and job satisfaction in the short, medium, and long term. Well, part of the lesson of Dirty Jobs, and part of what I try and talk about to anybody who will listen, is what if job satisfaction has nothing to do with the job and everything to do with the person? Is that possible? You know? And so when you start to ask questions like that, and you start to look at what passes for cookie cutter advice today, with regard to your question, here's a great one. Follow your passion. Follow your passion. I hear it all the time. I see, Beyonce and Adele and these people, they win these Grammys and they go out on stage and they say, somewhere out there, somebody's watching this and they're wondering, should I quit? Should I quit? Never quit, they say. Follow your dream, follow your passion. You can do it. And then you watch the first season of American Idol. Or any season. You watch the first episode of any season, right? That's when you see the truth of what following your passion can do. You got kids who are 20 years old who learn for the first time in their life on national television that they can't sing. They're in a singing contest. Short, medium, long-term goals, I don't know what they're thinking. I just know that they've had a steady diet of you can do it, never give up. So it's complicated, right? I mean, my mom's just written a book that proves that after 60 years, your dreams can come true. Long-term goal. Well, does that mean you ought to stick with whatever you're doing for 60 years until it turns out? I mean, stay the course. My scoutmaster used to tell me that. But I was young enough, even then, I knew enough to say, but doesn't staying the course only make sense if you're, going in the right direction? Well, let's not get bogged down in that. But this is the essential point. You can't just tell a kid to follow her passion or follow his passion because they're passionate. What you have to tell them, in my view, is never follow your passion, but always bring it with you. Find a way to love what you're doing. We got it all backwards. We tell kids today, here's what you got to do. You want to be happy, you sit down and you identify in your mind the thing that's going to make you fulfilled. And then you embark upon a great quest to get it, right? Take this course, take that course, volunteer here, do this, do that. Borrow whatever it takes to go to the school that will give you your credential, your paper. And then, oh, wait, you need another paper? Borrow some more and go to that school. And keep doing it. And then finally, you'll be qualified to apply for the job that will be the wish fulfillment of your passion. And then, if you get that job, then you can be happy. What a bunch of crap. All of the boxes are checked, but none of it's in the right order. The dirty jobs lesson is, with great respect, I don't care about your dreams. Here's what you do. You look around and you see where everybody's going, and you go the other way. And you see what's over there, and then you get hired doing something. Do you like it? I don't care. I don't care. Get good at it. Then get great at it. Then become indispensable. And then find a way to love it. That's what dirty jobs was and is. And that's the essential component that I'm looking for in the people that we attempt to help. I don't want people who aren't passionate. I want practical people who look around for an opportunity, master whatever skill they need to master in order to give it a good run, and then figure out a way to love it. Now, I don't know how to give that advice broadly, but when people ask me what I think kids need to hear, I usually default to some version of that. Because really, I mean it. The greatest truth I heard from this stage tonight was cookie cutter advice. No bueno. It's got to be more targeted. One other thing I heard up here that I absolutely love tonight, and I'm going to use wherever I'm going. Mary, where are we going tomorrow? Does anybody know? It doesn't matter. But I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to tell the story of Fibonacci and Shakespeare. Because that is it. And you know what? It's not a dichotomy. They're two sides of the same coin. And this is the thing that I really, like if I had a soapbox, Mark, I'd get on it.
You're on it.
All right. Well, this is it. In 2016, the Republicans were trying to figure out who to nominate. And there were 17 of them on the stage, right? It's phenomenal. I watched all the debates. And one night, Marco Rubio very casually said something along the lines of, what this country needs are fewer philosophers and more welders. And the crowd clapped, and I went over to my Facebook page, and I watched it in real time, like thousands of people going, oh my God, Mike, he just said.
He said it.
He said the thing. You must love this guy. And I'm like, that's not what I meant to say. That's not really where I'm coming from. What I'm saying is that it's true we don't have a shortage of philosophers. It's true we do have a shortage of welders. But what we need, if in fact need is even the right word, what we need are welders who can talk intelligently about Nietzsche and Descartes and Plato and Aristotle. What we need are philosophers who can run an even bead, right? What we need, what we need is a rubric wherein this way isn't exclusive of this way, where we can honestly forget about blue collar or white collar, where we can forget about the color of collars and just start talking about the curiosity that has to be at the root of any happy, self-actualized human. We have in our pockets and on our tables right now a device that didn't exist when most of us were in college. This smartphone with a decent internet connection gives us access to 99% of the known information in the world. We have it at our fingertips. What we don't have is the same device that can hardwire into our brains the skills that are desperately lacking. So because we don't have that, that's why I lean into that. Regarding short, medium, and long-term goals, I don't know. I just know that by and large, most of us who have done okay play the cards we get when we get them. Everything's a balance.
With that, you've got an early flight. You didn't sleep last night. We need to get you out of here. Mike, you are a treasure to our country.
I thought I was
and
an
we're
icon.
grateful for your
I thought I was an icon.
Hey, I'm throwing them all out there, all right?
And a treasure, come on.
We're so grateful you were here, man. Serious. Thank you.
Listen, thank you. And I was just talking to Mary before I walked up here, and I'm like, it's embarrassing sometimes how little I know about what's about to happen to me and what I'm about to see. I blame it on a lack of preparedness. It's certainly not a lack of interest, but I'm such a fan of you personally, and I knew enough about what was happening here, but to be honest, I didn't really know what I was walking into, and I didn't really understand what I was looking at till I sat there and watched it. So I don't know how all this money thing works and the forms and the stuff and the challenges, but I'm happy to throw in 10 grand and challenge all of you to do the same.